Be very interesting to see how this Freedom Rally goes on the 27th of July in London, because for some idiotic reason on the same day there's another rally, allegedly an anti-racism rally, but it's in direct conflict to the Freedom Rally organised, I believe, by Urban Scoop. They're trying to make it out to be some sort of Tommy Robinson event, but it's not. Lawrence Fox is involved, Mayor Toosey, Jeff Taylor, many of you will have watched him. Hello there, do you remember him? Stood in front of a curtain. Just reminded me of a magician. I thought he was going to have a bit of stuff come on in like a glittery lame suit going like that. Jeff Taylor, he's going. There's loads of other people going too. Who would organise something? I mean, this has been booked for a long time because they were talking about it on the 1st of June, which was the first Freedom Rally, which got really good attendance. So it's been booked for a long time. I wonder when this second rally was booked, the one that Paloma Faith is advertising, who just wants everyone to be happy. Who doesn't? What makes you think we don't want that or other people don't want that? It's called an anti-racism rally, and that guy used to be the Prime Minister, I think he's a communist, of Greece. Hello, peeps. He's going on about it, sat in Greece, telling us how to run England. I don't really think you're in any position to tell us how to run a country. Have you seen yours? It's a basket case financially. Apart from making olives and British tourists pregnant, what else have you done? You've bloody crippled your economy because you're in the EU. Going back onto the EU, it always used to amuse me and amaze me, the absolute farce of running two parliaments, you know, the one in Brussels and then the one in Strasbourg, where Juncker used to get a private jet. It's a 4-hour road trip, I've done it myself. Juncker used to get a private jet. Just to make this 4-hour road trip, he wouldn't do the road trip. And then the convoys of stuff used to go down, these big Pantechnicons. And there was a really excellent documentary made by someone from Vote Leave, I think it was, or Leave EU. And when the Pantechnicons arrived, huge trailers traipse into Strasbourg with all stuff because they host a parliament there. I think it's once a fortnight or once a month. Just to talk more bollocks in Strasbourg, you know, the same stuff they talk in Brussels. And when they open the back of these trailers, there's like 4 or 5 lever arch files. I'm not kidding. There's a video on it. You can watch it. And they eventually stop in filming. There's nothing in the trailers. But there's a French company got the contract to do it. Come on. So you can see why I've always seen the EU as such a farce. Going back to the march on Saturday the 27th, obviously it went off peaceably last time. Didn't even leave any litter. Police got on well with the people who turned up, the attendees. They were from all walks of life, pensioners, all different races, different religions. People were there for one reason, because what's happened to us this last 3 years, we don't want to see it unfold and happen again, because obviously it's too much government and we're in a democracy, what's left of it, and we want to make sure that that continues. But it always amazes me, they always like to shove Tommy Robinson to the front of anything to do with freedom and try and diss him down. By one of the favourites is, that's not his real name, he's really called Stephen Laxley Lennon. And yeah, we know he is, but if you're going to put yourself out as the everyman, it's not really got a ring to it, has it? We had a Betterware salesman, used to call himself Harry Holden, when he was going on Betterware case, and they used to give you them coasters, do you remember, shaped like a maple leaf. He was the Betterware salesman, he was called Harry Holden, but he's a member at Polish Club, he was called Jakub Lewiński. It wasn't Harry Holden at all, but selling his Betterware was better for him to call himself an easy to remember typical Lancashire or British name, Harry Holden. But when he was knocking at the door, he'd say, hello, I want to show you all my things, because here we have some great value things. He was obviously foreign, nobody bothered, but it's just easy to say Harry Holden, Tommy Robinson, typical British names. That's all it is, it's nothing sinister. What gets me with this is, all right, so you've brought that point up, you've made your point. Grant Shapps. I love this fella. Grant Shapps, yeah, during the time, he sued someone, or he threatened to sue a constituent who put a post on Facebook because he'd been using another name called Michael Green. I think at first he denied it. I'm not sure about this, so I'm not making any accusations, or as my Auntie Abby would say, don't make any insinuations about me. And he was calling himself Michael Green because he had this online business to help entrepreneurs grow the business. So he called himself Michael Green. And then there were other names. There was Corinne Stockheath, which is apparently a testimonial he got from this woman, but nobody can find her. So the Guardian did a hit piece on it, and so did Channel 4. It's not like them, is it? But you have a serving MP using different names. Big deal. He obviously had his reasons. I'm not defending him. I mean, this is the fool that showed us. They did a public information film, didn't they, the Tories, showing you how to turn your own boiler down. I mean, it's just like watching your country implode. Hi, here's a public information film for the Thickers Brigade. Yeah, here's the stat. Here's your room stat. The one with the dial and the numbers. Alternatively, it could be digital. And this is what you do. You go to the dial and you turn it down in a downward manner, and that brings your heating bill down. We bloody well know we had it fitted. It's in our house. Do you really think we're that stupid? Showing us how to allegedly save money all the time. How to not run your hot tap too long. Oh, believe me, we're the ones getting the bills, love. We know not to run our hot tap too long. So then I question the calibre of MPs. I mean, Grant Sharps. Are they really in it to make a difference, or are they in it just to make a living? I'm sorry, I go for option 2. I can't see anybody. I mean, has he still got his seat? I'm not even sure if he's still in. I don't really care who's in. They're all useless. They're mostly useless. You can't expect people to have faith in Parliament when we've been treated the way we've been treated. I have funny little things, like they're not premonitions, I'm not bloody psychic, but I have funny little things where I think, oh, a little flash thought will come in my head, and I think, I'm not going to be here long, or whatever it is that's going on. I did that with the house I was in. I was having some curtains hung, and as I was putting the curtains up with this curtain fitter, I remember thinking, I'm not going to live here very long, and I was right, I didn't. Although when I was hanging the curtains at the time, I didn't expect to think that. And I always remember when they covered up Big Ben. I've got a bit X-Files here. When they covered up Big Ben and that tarpaulin sheet dropped down, I remember thinking, it's going to change forever. And I know it's got nothing to do with Parliament, but it was all cloaked in sheets and scaffolding. And let's face it, since they've took it off, it hasn't been the same, has it? It's been something, a shadow of its former self. I mean, all this hoo-ha about people. There's one Labour MP, I can't even be bothered to learn his name. He's woke, he's, believes in diversity, equity and exclusion, I call it, because, it's not inclusion, it's exclusion, because you're excluding people from fitting in a narrative. How can that be inclusive? He's one of them, and he refused to sign allegiance to the King or swear allegiance to the King. The Parliament set up, the monarch is the head of the Parliament. It's a tradition. Now, the fact we don't like this current monarch, I feel sure that people who didn't like Henry VIII, all those having their heads chopped off, probably felt similar. It's the office, isn't it? Whether you like him or not, he's only in the office transiently. Now, I'm not keen on the King. I don't like him. He's a globalist. I think he's got bad advisors and he listens to them. But that's only my opinion. And at this stage in the game, I'm allowed it. But this guy wouldn't sign allegiance, so they had to sign him in again. And people are saying, yes, I don't blame him, he's not my king. Yeah, he's not your king. You can say that. You're living in a free country. You can walk around. You can say it in Sainsbury's. You can say it in the co-op. You can say it where you want. But you've put yourself forward as a member of Parliament, and the head of the Parliament's the monarch of the country. It's not ideal at the moment, but it is what it is. So you can't expect to just diss over is it 1,000 years of tradition? This is where we're falling apart. It's not the fact that he's made a stand because you don't like the King, you're glad about that. put that in a box. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. I don't like what he stands for. I don't like the way he thinks. You know, if he believes in you know, the stuff he says, like natural progression with farming and gardening and not using pesticides and all that stuff. If he really believes in the things that he says, wouldn't it be nice to see him open Highgrove up and turn it into allotments for the poor to grow their own stuff? Just saying. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? That'd show him as a man of the people. But oh no, you sit yourself in a bloody big house in the middle of acres and acres, hundreds of acres of land, and then to keep people out you have fences, and all that land for what? What does he do with it? He farms some of it, but like show farming, you know, like everything's done with real string, and you know, it's just all what I call top show farming. We have an MP round here who opens his gardens to the public. It's not him, it's his wife actually. And, you know, they have these big greenhouses full of fruit, but it all gets put in a bin. It doesn't get given to anyone after they've grown it. They open the gardens, it's all very nice, but nothing actually happens to the fruit. They don't give it away. So there's a lot of stuff unfortunately done for top show, and I think if you're going to go and be an MP, whether you like it or not, you have to sign allegiance to him, and it's the office you're signing allegiance to, not the individual. He's just in charge at the time. So I don't agree with, oh good, he wouldn't do it. And some of the people saying your allegiance in a foreign language, what the hell is that about? Can you imagine British people getting away with that in any other country? You see, the trouble is, what really gets me is we get called all these names. Oh, Britain's racist, racist this, racist that. We're the only one, the only country that has its NHS documents translated into 23 languages. We're the only country where if a foreign national wants healthcare, we will provide the interpreter at the taxpayer's expense. They don't do it in Spain. They certainly don't do it in Austria, because you have to speak German. They deal with your healthcare in German. So what gets me with this is the cost. There's absolutely no thought goes into how much this lot costs. Now, we all hear tales about the NHS and, you know, the Tories want to disband it. It's been disbanded. When we were locked down, there was a document produced. Sorry, I had to let Jeff in. When we were locked down, there was a document produced entitled, you can Google it, NHS Reset. They've already done it. They did it while we were locked down. These doctors' surgeries, rescheduling how they take appointments, wasn't anything to do, well, it was a bit, with the actual reason we locked down. They were doing it anyway. But this was a golden opportunity to reshape things. And, you know, you're now getting health advice from third parties. The NHS is dismantled anyway. Serco are doing the meals. I think there's cleaning of hospitals is subcontracted. Nothing's what it was. But what you've got to look back at is why the NHS was set up. We set the NHS up because the poor couldn't get basic healthcare. Now, you can disagree with me on this. It's just a point of view. Bevan set it up. It was actually a Tory idea. If you Google it, you can find out it's a Tory idea. The National Health Service was a Tory idea, but Parliament changed and Labour got in and Bevan introduced it. And Bevan was a good sort. It was when Labour were proper Labour, when they had a party that were trying to do things for the abject poor. And the NHS was designed to get basic healthcare to people who were dying from pneumonia and dying from simple lung infections that they can now cure. So when it was set up, basic healthcare was all it was, and hospitals were clean, they weren't overrun, we didn't have as many people, and we certainly didn't have people who didn't speak English working in them. We had people from this country who worked in the NHS. Then it was Enoch Powell who suggested bringing doctors over from India because they trained for medicine in English. and he had a great respect for India. He was over there when he was in the army, and he was actually a brilliant military strategist, and it never gets talked about because the media, again, even before we had the internet to find out how duplicitous they are, the media have only ever put one narrative out about Enoch Powell, Rivers of Blood. This was one speech he made, and it's only a part of a speech that's been cannibalised to sound worse than it is. Enoch Powell was a brilliant military strategist, and often it's said he was the best prime minister we never had. But he was the one that brought the Indian doctors in because they trained in medicine in English, and they were sent initially, I think, to the Welsh villages because the miners, there's no doctors. Nobody had a doctor. You couldn't get to see a doctor if you were poor. So they started this service, the NHS, the National Health Service. Brilliant idea in its concept. But let's fast forward to today. Do you think in his wildest dreams that Bevan would have ever anticipated that the burden would be put on the taxpayer to have foreign nationals come over here and have their babies and then get complex healthcare afterwards at our expense? The NHS is supposed to do a reciprocal with the country they're from. They don't even bother filling the forms in a lot of the time. Do you think he anticipated repeated visits for IVF, which is really expensive? I'm not saying you shouldn't have it. What I'm saying is how it's evolved into something far more costly. Do you think sex changes and hormone replacement therapy for people who are trans, do you think that was ever in his mind when he set up the NHS? Or do you think it was basic stuff like how to stop colds and flu becoming worse, how to treat fevers, how to perform surgery for things like burst appendix, and then joints and stuff being replaced? We've evolved into something really quite complex and expensive. And if you want to know what healthcare is like in America, and a basic package, 6 months of chemo will cost you 38,000 quid. That's what it costs in a paid for health service. That's a basic package. Don't forget, once you've run out of your package, there's no more. You have to pay for it. So what if you need another 6 months? So the chemo, I agree with that being on the NHS. I'm glad it is. What I'm trying to say is let's just look at what's happened to the NHS. You know, people are having nose jobs and boob jobs for low self-esteem because someone's gone to see a doctor, I don't feel very good about myself. Well, you'll have to live with it. You'll have to concentrate on other stuff because we're spending money, tag lag, on what I call choice, surgery of choice. And not only that, this takes up the time of the surgeons and the nurses and doctors in the beds. Then you've got this government interference whereby during 2017 they depleted the NHS by 15,000 beds. Now, as you know, we are a growing population. Why would you take away 15,000 beds? And then they took another 5,000 beds away during lockdown. Who would do that? On the one hand, the media is bombarding you with publicity about how serious everything is. You're expecting people to be dropping down dead in the streets. And yet, while that's going on, they take 5,000 beds away. Now, those 5,000 beds, some of them were mental health beds. But, also the mental health side of it. Some caseworkers only have 2 and 3 clients. And they go off long-term sick for months on end. Then come back to work for a week or a fortnight and sign off again. It's abused. The system that was set up is being abused from inside and from outside. It's not going to work. It can't work because it's being abused. Even stock control of bandages, aqueous cream, basic stuff, antiseptics, there's no control over it. Or there isn't enough. So what you've got to look at, these expensive things like cosmetic surgery. I know someone who's had a full sex change, and I'm not begrudging them that. They've lived as a woman for most of their adult life and harmlessly just getting on with their life. They're not doing anything. They're not saying people ought to have more surgery. There's nothing like that. But he's had obviously all these different surgeries on the NHS, obviously hormones on the NHS, but he's had a partial facelift on the NHS and some fat removal on the NHS and a gastric band on the NHS. Surely that's got nothing to do with going down the trans route. Why is that? How can you have that? How expensive is that? And I'm not having a go at him. I'm just using it as an example. We've gone bonkers. People there, I'm going to have a gastric band fitted. Stop putting it in. Just stop putting food in this bit. You won't have to put anything in this bit. It's simple. You might not like it, but can you see how the whole system has got abused everywhere? And then, subcontracting stuff like the meals, which are abysmal, and the cleaning and other stuff. It was because the NHS in-house was too expensive. That's the only reason subcontractors got a look in. But then the greed of corporations come into it then, because they can do it cheaper. They could do it cheaper even still by supplying less and giving worse stuff. So it all starts to unravel. So what became a really good idea in the initial stages has grown into what I see as an absolute monster that doesn't work. I was talking to a doctor once in Austria, an amazingly clean country. They didn't have any hospital diseases. He didn't know what I was on about when I said, when you go in hospital, you get in. He went, no, you go in hospital to make yourself well. You go to the hospital, we make you well. I said, no, you can get hospital diseases. What are you talking about? I said, I couldn't remember the name of the disease. You get them from the hospital. Well, why aren't they making the hospitals sanitised? And in the casualty, when you've been treated, the whole room you've just been in is sanitised before the next patient. So because he was quite friendly, I was going on about, you don't have the same healthcare. He said, we have a different healthcare. You have to pay proportionately. You can pay what you want. You can have a little different scheme. He said, people in Europe have not copied the NHS because it doesn't work. That's why we don't make it a copy of it. It doesn't work. So I think he's right, it doesn't work. So this monster now, the biggest employer in the UK, I think it's got 1 million employees, 100,000 of them marched against being forcibly medicated with the rollout. It's not working. We have to face the fact it's not working. How you sort it out, I don't know. Farage has an idea about it, which is basically a contribution. You've only got to look at how many doctor's appointments are missed. Our little surgery used to have about 300 appointments a month missed. That's people just not turning up. Would you do that if you were paying? Would you just forget about it or not turn up? That's not turning up and ringing them up and telling them you can't come because something's cropped up. That's just not turning up. So when I say it's abused from within and from outside, because even the patients can't be trusted. So it has to change. Something has to give, because it cannot go on this way. What surprised me when I was working on Brexit is because what happens, because I blog and I use Facebook mainly in those days, people would contact me in Messenger and say, I work for the Department of Work and Pensions, I work in the NHS, I work for immigration, please don't give my name, and they tell me something. You could actually get, with Eastern Europeans, you'd be living here as an Eastern European before Brexit, and a relative would come over, case example, grandma comes over to look after the grandkids during school holidays. So she comes at the beginning of school holidays, she's got a dodgy knee. So she goes to the hospital. You can correct me on the thread if I'm wrong, but this is what I got told by someone who works in this department. They go to the hospital, they need a knee operation. All they needed to register in our country for the operation was a mobile phone number. So you just buy a cheap mobile phone with an English SIM card. And then they would put her on the list. she'd look after the grandkids, then go home. Then when they'd send you a thing for when your hospital appointment's ready, you just ring her up from Poland or wherever she's from. They can come over and have the knee operation. They haven't paid a penny into the system. This is what I mean about abuse. You wouldn't be able to do that the other way around. The system's tighter. The way they find out who you are. I had to go and see an emergency dentist in Austria, and the system was tied up tighter than a gnat's arse. You couldn't have faked it. You had to fill in these forms and this protocol to make sure that there was a reciprocal. So until we can stop the abuse, until somebody can actually manage the NHS properly, and they haven't done it, have they? Hunt, he's the one that depleted it of 15,000 beds in 2017. Hancock in 2021. They took another 5,000 off us. So it's not been managed right, has it? Who takes beds out of a system with a growing population? That is madness. They don't manage their property properly. They own lots of redundant buildings that are just sat there with money invested that could be earning money. I just find it absolutely incredulous that we've got to this. And if you've got any ideas on how you think you could improve the NHS, put them on the thread. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in another video.